different. He's continually motivated by the disability community to be fearless and fabulous, no matter what life throws his way. So please welcome our funny, fearless and fabulous panelists. Imaan, I'm going to start off with you. What is it like being so fearless and fabulous? How do you do it?
Well, it's fun to be fearless and fabulous. It takes some work, but it's about because being fabulous is a state of fearlessness. To reach fabulousness, you need to be relaxed and know that if you were to trip over, that you would be caught. And when you get rid of the fear of falling over and hurting yourself, then you are given the confidence to be fabulous. So I'm very lucky that I've been able to travel the world and do what I do because of the support that Australia can give me. So yeah, I'm very lucky. Yeah.
And what do you love about the disability community?
This is an interesting question because I never really thought there was a disability community. There's just a community and there's disabled people within it. But that's just my experiences. But I guess because I'll tell you a story about when I did in Edinburgh. I was doing a show late at night and I was doing a karaoke show and I was singing Killing in the Name Of by Rage Against the Machine, getting all hyped up, and I started crowd surfing. And the community held me up, just everyone was holding me up when I was crowd surfing. And then I was getting towards the end, I almost fell. And some guy caught me and brought me back to the stage. And I turned around to see who it was to thank him. And it was a guy on one leg who caught me and started hopping away. No mention of anything. And I think that is a great example of how community and disability is one big umbrella and not separate.
I love it. Great story about being fearless as well as the disability community.
Yeah.
Bridget, what about you? What do you love about the disability community?
Well, I think I might have more fear than Imaan. I've never crowd surfed. I confess that to you now. What I love about that was brilliant, actually, what Imaan said about being one community. I don't have a disability. I care for somebody that I love who has a disability. And I think what we all crave is understanding. And the disability community is, I've found, non-judgmental. Okay. So, I've had to learn over the years just not to sweat the small stuff. And I think the beauty of people who, have disability or, our family members is that you have the gift of perspective. So what is worth, arguing about and what you just let go. Okay. And, we all have to, tolerate, in my case with my son, we take him out to a restaurant, he might decide that he would really prefer to eat his dinner while sitting on the floor next to us. Or, I have friends who have, children that need to only wear, one color clothing. It's just making it work and just getting on with life. It's the lack of judgment.
Thanks, Bridget. And Michael, how about you?
I think the way that I approach this question, was thinking about what other communities am I a part of? So I'm a part of the queer community, the academic community, and certainly the disability community. But what I love the most about the disability community is it's got such a strong sense of solidarity, as both Imaan and Bridget sort of hinted at, this oneness. So I find that that's where I found the most meaning in my own life, and working in sort of an advocacy context with people with disability and their families. There's a real intimacy that sort of develops, like a real genuine human connection, and to be able to be a part of that is very cool. So I think that ability to come together, I think as a community, the disability community is getting stronger and louder and prouder and more organized because we share this deep understanding that we're not where we need to be yet, and we ought to be. So for me, yeah, it's about that ability to advocate for and accomplish change and bring other people into our fold. So that's what I love the most about the disability community.
Thanks, Michael. Yeah, I think we've really seen that this year with how International Day is being celebrated this year. It's really building, which is fantastic. Imaan, what does inclusion mean to you?
This one I have a bit of trouble with because I didn't know I was excluded until you asked me this question. Um, I think that it's the wrong kind of framing. I think we are all included until you feel excluded, and then you got to be invited back in. But I think we should all be, I don't know, this term, I like, it's the whole thing of tolerance. I don't want to be tolerated. I want to be invited. You know, there's a difference of language there. So I mean, I'm a middle class, almost white male, so I'll never feel excluded ever.
And Bridget, what are your reflections on that?
Well, for me, I want my son to be able to enjoy his life. And, you know, I did decide to send him to a full special school, which I thought was the right decision for us because his level of intellectual disability is reasonably high. And I thought it was a good environment where his needs would be met. But I want him to be able to participate in all of the aspects of life that we all enjoy. And so, you know, going out, you know, being able to have social activities that are meaningful and having work-like activities. You know, Daniel will never be able to work in, you know, fully independent employment, but I want the tempo of his day to look like what it looks like for everyone else. So we are, you know, looking at all different models of being able, you know, to make that work, because everybody needs to have, you know, meaning in life. So I want him, yeah, I want him to be able to have all of the joy and all of the, you know, special things that we all get to enjoy as people.
And Michael, what does inclusion mean to you? Hopefully
So
not.
I think about inclusion from two lenses, I guess. So as someone who works in disability advocacy, you know, inclusion is my baseline. So that's what I work with and for people to achieve, and whatever their version of inclusion looks like. But I'd like to just hint at a quick quote, if I can remember it correctly, by this a US-based transformative and disability justice activist named Mia Mingus. And Mia is this queer, transracial woman with disability, and she talks about inclusion as liberation and inclusion as not just having a seat at someone else's table, but building something more magnificent than a table. And I love that. I love that metaphor. And she also talks about something called the principled struggle, which is, you know, working together to achieve change. So I also think about how I get included by the disability community to be a part of that journey. And to me, that's really special. Like I feel the most me in the disability community, and to be able to feel included while promoting inclusion is a real privilege. So yeah, that's how I see inclusion.
Excuse me, everyone, while I turn the lights back in on in my office. I've got a light sensor.
Yeah.
And now onto a bit of a meaty topic. Imaan, what's the most important recommendation that you'd like to see out of the Disability Royal Commission's final report?
So I'm going to be candid and honest here. I did not know that there was a Disability Royalty Commission happening because I'm not, as you know, I'm not that involved in advocacy like these amazing people like Michael and Bridget who are putting the hard work in so I could have a nice life. But I think now, upon reflection, there's a little bit of things that just don't need to be as difficult as they are to prove, like the ability, like to ask someone to prove they're disabled is a really, I don't know, it's a bit hard because like I just send them a picture of me not being able to reach a doorway and And that's not enough in this system. You know, like I had to, when I got my car modified, I wasn't able to get funding to get it modified because I wasn't disabled enough, whatever that means. So I think what I would put as a recommendation is to allow flexibility and common sense to make decisions, and then whatever you save, when you save money on those people that tick the checklist, oh, you know, this, instead of having that at the start of the process when people are the most vulnerable, have that at the other side of the process when they've been accepted, and then that way people don't miss out, and then, you know, and there's no wastage of bureaucratic wastage, because I think it is really difficult to get the disability card. It's like it takes it's easier to get a credit card than a disability card. That's not okay.
Well, I think it's fine that you've been candid, Imaan, because that's what we hear a lot, and it's great to now have you on board and letting people know about the Disability Royal Commission.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we also hear that feedback a lot around that endless need for bureaucratic proof of disability.
Yeah, it's a bit much. I mean, life is hard enough. You shouldn't make it harder just to pay a few wigs on the top or in the middle, not even at the top.
And Bridget, what recommendations would you like to see, and how have your experiences?
Okay. Well, I do have a wish list. I'll try and keep it short. One is, I think that there needs to be a lot more work done at the intersection between children who are on the NDIS transitioning to adulthood, and at the other end with adults transitioning to the aged care system. Now, my experience is really based on my son having recently become an adult, and myself and his father had managed his plan quite effectively together for a number of years. And at 18, the agency just set Daniel loose, to be able to do whatever it is he wanted to do, and made it very, there's always good people that are willing to help, but the system has so many layers. It's like an onion. You think, well, it was working well before. Why can't we just seamlessly transition across? But like Imaan, being asked to identify myself again, and then not being able to do that electronically, but having to physically attend an office in an inconvenient location. All of those small things become very cumbersome when you've already got, in my case, a caring burden. Now, I mean, I use the term burden. I love my son. I'm happy to do it. But the reality is that there is limited time, and being able to ease up some of the red tape, it doesn't need to be as high. There's a lot of people, in families who are doing the right thing and don't require the same level of, I guess, government overlords to be able to, it's a balancing test. I mean, it's taxpayer money, so it needs to be accountable, but it doesn't have to feel like we are all prisoners.
Yeah, I agree. And Michael, what would you like to see?
This is going to be really hard to keep short. I'm going to do my best. There's a hell of a lot I want to see. And I hope this doesn't sound too negative to start with, but what I would really love to see is ableism recognized and resisted in the same way that other categories of oppression like racism and sexism are. So it sounds terrible saying, let's, give primacy to ableism. But what I'm saying is we need to have that sort of common language and that common ground from which to launch an attack. That sounds really aggressive, but what I'm getting at is that if the Royal Commission can highlight where ableist practices and ideas may thrive, or where there's vulnerabilities for those things to happen, and nip that in the bud, I think that's going to go a really long way to fixing our systems from the base up. And I think that's what we need to do. And that's also the same reason why I so believe in grassroots activism, you know, the stuff that we can do together as the people affected and involved directly in the disability community. And yes, I'd love to see the Royal Commission highlight ableism as an issue and find strategies to undercut that.
Imaan?
Yeah, I just wanted to add also that the idea that I mean, most people have some kind of disability, and I think that needs to be reminded that it's not an othering. You know, disability is eventually everyone will be disabled at some point in their life. So to frame it as though we're given to another community or that the government is going to look after it, no, this is for people. This is for everyone. This is for when you are 65. This is for when you have a car accident. This is for when your mind goes, you know, this is for everyone. Let's not, ableism is an issue for everyone. So I agree with what you were saying, Michael. And I wanted to just add that, you know, let's not look at others because one day you will be disabled too.
Great point. Bridget?
I also wanted to add something. Which is, I mean, I do believe in the fundamental goodness of people. And I think one of the important things in encouraging people to tell their story to the Royal Commission is that without doing that, I don't believe that government really understands the way that systems impact us. I mean, nobody is trying to make it difficult. So the importance of being able to explain how things could work better is, I think, key to system reform. I mean, no matter how small you think it is, you know, the example of, you know, having to go in, you know, twice to be able to, you know, get one outcome. You know, please consider telling somebody about that so that there can be change.
And Lorraine, I love your comment in the chat about getting in touch. We'd love to hear from you. And Michael, I know you have done a lot of work with the Royal Commission in some research around policing, and you're also doing a thesis on justice and redress for people with disability that have been criminalised. Do you have any views or perspective or recommendations from your work in that area that you'd like to see come out of the Commission?
Yeah, I think the othering that Imaan mentioned is or arrives in its most consequential form in criminalisation of any group. So I don't see the justice needs of people with disability as distinguished from the needs of people of colour and First Nations people, queer people. You know, we all have a right to be here and have so much to contribute. And for me, the criminal justice system is like the most othering force that exists in society. So I would love to see, you know, the Royal Commission go really hard at, you know, fixing every other system that leads people to end up in the criminal justice system. And that's, you know, yes, the systemic stuff, but also attitudinal stuff in the community. I just want disability to be a big common part of everyone's experience and everyone's conversation. That's what I think where we need to get.
And I've got a question that's from Kelly from our info line at Your Story. And I think she knows you, Bridget. You were her lecturer at university. So I'll start with you, but how can someone be a positive advocate for the disability community?
Look, I think that it is important that there is support for all of us in trying to achieve, you know, systems change. And I think, you know, just listening and trying to understand is you know, what I value. Helping people tell their stories, I think is important. And also, you know, for those of us who work in certain areas, being able to help people advocate positively, I think achieves better results. So things like identifying, where the appropriate forum for complaint is often important. There's no point in making a complaint and getting somebody offside if they can't actually do something about it. And I see this happen a lot in school settings. If there's a policy in place that needs to be changed, that is something which we can all write to government about. But there's no point complaining to the teacher, if that makes sense, because they don't have the ability to change that policy. So it's, helping to engage with government where we can all advocate and have a voice about how we want our policies to operate.
And Michael, what do you think in terms of how people can be a positive advocate for the disability community?
So in the work that I do, the activist and the justice space, the formal advocacy, that's definitely one avenue. There's definitely plenty of advocacy services out there. And I think it would be great if anyone had a need for advocacy or might have a need for advocacy to contact disability advocacy services. They do a great job across the country. But I think more generally, the way that I think I try to be effective in terms of being a positive advocate for the disability community is more so in my personal life. So making sure that, when I'm speaking to my friends, like I'm speaking about disability and, exposing them to different things going on in the disability community. I think that goes a long way to making disability justice, just part of the conversation. So like take your friends to go see performers like Imaan, invite people to events like this, volunteer, just talk about disability. There's so many ways to bring people into the fold.
And we've got a follow-up question for you on that, Michael, from the audience, which is how do you become an advocate and how do you best advocate for yourself if you have a psychosocial disability?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that in terms of becoming a self-advocate, I think it's about really getting to know your own strengths. And sometimes that's hard to do on your own to start with. So I think it's about connecting with people that trust you, developing a strong relationship, whether that's a formal relationship or an informal relationship, but having good people around you that help you recognize your strengths, I think is the first and most basic part of that journey.
And then what about your pathway to becoming a disability advocate?
Right. Before I worked in disability, truthfully, I didn't know a lot about disability. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I started volunteering at boarding houses for Newtown Neighbourhood Centre, and I was just exposed to this whole new world. And I took quite a few volunteer jobs and just worked my way up. And I found that I just saw so much potential in all the people I got to spend my time with. And so that just made me work really hard to try and get involved more formally in advocacy. And that's where I am, and it's great. I recommend it.
And Bridget, did you want to add something to that?
Yes, I did. I wanted to do a plug for advocacy services. I recognize that, of course, there are limits, on people's ability to access, and there are funding constraints, and not everything can have a professional advocate. But disability is intensely personal, and one of the skills that an advocate needs to have is the ability to understand what is relevant to their argument and to be able to actually depersonalize it to get the best outcome. So you want to be making an argument for change based on, objective information and taking the emotion out. And that's really hard for people to do, including me. I have to work at that all the time, even though, I also used to do this for a living. So somebody like Michael has the ability to hear your story and be able to reframe it in a positive, neutral way with the relevant information. And that is absolutely vital to getting a good outcome. Don't kill the messenger. So avoiding language like, you said or you did, and instead referring to the issue is important.
Yeah, I would reinforce those comments, Bridget. A lot of the team at Your Story, the lawyers here, work with Michael and other disability advocates, and they love working collaboratively with Michael and the other advocates, and the feedback that we get from clients is really fantastic as well about working with disability advocates. And I think it's really important to know that that support is there if you are thinking about taking part. Imaan, on that point, we have a comment from Facebook, which is, thanks, Imaan, for sharing your points. Agree. And on that note, how do you think that you are, or how can someone become a positive advocate for the disability community?
Well, I think, you know, you could go down, you know, where the professional or the more, you know, the Michael vibe of advocacy, where you're actually, you know, working and it's beautiful and structured. But then also within the community, like I do find that people are afraid to approach disabled people, physically disabled people, or obviously disabled people. They're afraid to approach because they're of fear that they might offend. And I think the fear of offending isolates more than the acceptance of keeping your mind open and having a discussion and knowing that you could be wrong and learning from that, as opposed to being afraid to never be wrong and then not saying anything and then leaving the disabled person kind of isolated within society. I think to advocate for disability is to try and not see the disability as the first thing you see, but go like, oh, nice hat, you're welcome. You know, that kind of thing, where it's just not to make the big song and dance, so you can start, you know, feeling part of society and not as mostly framed as a burden on society, but something that enriches it and has something to say and has stories that don't need to be through official channels, but even someone at the cafe, you know, like just to keep it light, man. It's not as serious. Just be nice. Don't be afraid.
And we've got another comment in the chat. Disability doesn't define anyone. It's part of who we all are. Bridget?
Sorry, I don't want to take up more time than my share, but I just thought, as Imaan was talking about an example that drove me a little bit bonkers when my son was very young and I was taking him to and from kindy drop off with my older boy. And I was continually being asked questions by other mothers that were very well intentioned, but which were, you know, about his issues. You know, what's he not doing? What have you looked at? And there is a mental and emotional load that comes with having to answer everybody's questions all of the time, which are well-meaning. And I thought to myself, how can I stop this, but in a positive way? And there was another mother who one day looked into his pram and said to me, you know, you have the most beautiful smile, Daniel. And I really loved hearing that, because I thought, you are noticing my son for being, like everybody else, a beautiful person. And I wrote her a thank you note saying, you know, thank you for focusing on something about him, you know, that was just what all mothers want to hear. And it spread like wildfire. And it was like he was a rock star the next week, you know. So the message had subtly, but in a positive way, got through that, you know, I didn't just want to talk about the issues with his disability. He's my child. I want to talk about him.
Imaan?
Yeah, I have a nephew who's also a nonverbal autistic, and I do notice that a lot of with nonverbal, especially, people talk about you even when you're in the room and assume that just because you're nonverbal that you can't understand, and that breeds more frustration for the nonverbal person. And so, and when I go out with my nephew and people, they want to talk to him, but they address me, and I think it's not fair, because he can communicate. It's just you might have to listen in a different way. So yeah, and when people speak directly to Osiris, my nephew, it makes you feel like, oh, there is a community and things are gonna get easier. And so I appreciate Bridget for sharing that. Yeah.
Because there is receptive language.
Exactly. Yeah. And we know that studies show that I think 75% of all languages within the body. So, like, you know, words are for intellectuals.
And thanks to everyone in the audience and all your engagement and your comments. It's fantastic. We've got another one. Disability are not all the same level, depends on culture and language, such as deaf culture and deaf language compares to hearing culture and hearing voice language. So please be aware of it. And another question, I think along the lines of what you were talking about, Michael, before, about your pathway to be an advocate. Are there any courses that you can do that are self-based or recognised in terms, I think that's in terms of self-advocacy as well as professional advocacy?
Yeah, there's definitely quite a few different courses, in person, online. I can collate a couple of them if that would be helpful, and we could send them out.
That would be great. Thank you. And I wanted to find out if any of you have shared your story with the Disability Royal Commission and what it was like.
I haven't. Next.
Well, we know that you've only recently found out about it, but that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to put something together now that I know about it. But yeah, I think it's important. Yeah, and I'm glad that this conversation is happening. And yeah, and I'm glad for people and humbled by people like Michael and Bridget for actually dedicating their life to help this commission have the right result. Because anything with the word royal in it is a bit hard to back, but you know, let's try it.
And Michael or Bridget, do you have any reflections about that?
Well, I think Imaan might be elevating my involvement a bit in what I've done. I'm actually have taken a couple of weeks off in December to sit down and write my story because I want to make sure that I do it in a positive way where somebody can understand what my real concerns are. And it's important to me to own my own story. So I'm in, I guess, the crowd of people that doesn't mind, you know, maybe oversharing my information. I want to think about what I want to say carefully. So I've actually taken time off to be able to do it.
That's great. And Michael?
Yeah, look, my reflection is really about helping people with disability and their families and other people tell their story to the Royal Commission. So I've helped quite a few people do that in written form, video form, audio, art. Like, there's no wrong way for people to tell their story. And I think as Bridget puts it so well, everyone is entitled to own their story and tell them whatever way feels right for them. I think some people have been telling the Royal Commission what works, what's good, what's made my life meaningful and given it quality and value and given me a sense of belonging. So I've helped a few people do submissions like that as well. So yeah, I think it's a once in a generation opportunity to bring the experience of the personal to the ears and eyes of the overlords, I think Bridget said earlier, but to that level, to kind of be able to hopefully make change that really reflects the experience of people's actual lives and not just those that bureaucrats and policymakers think are happening.
And another question, Michael, that we get a lot from people is, how long does it take to take part in the Disability Royal Commission and how involved is it?
Look, again, everyone's different. I've helped people do submissions that are 1 page long, where they've just got something really concise and specific that they want to get across. Others have been quite long, you know, an hour video of back and forth conversation. It can be really casual, really formal, whatever works, but it's different for everyone. It depends on what people want to say. And there's, as I mentioned earlier, there's plenty of advocacy services that are funded specifically to help people tell their story to the Royal Commission. So I recommend getting in contact with some of them and getting the ball rolling and finding out what's going to work for you.
Great. And we've got a few more comments coming through from Facebook, which is fantastic. We have one, they've said, I love the way you put it, Imaan. They can communicate, you just have to listen in another way. Brilliant. And also you got a big laugh when you said royal comment.
Awesome. I'm glad I can still get a laugh from the other side of the country.
We've also got another great comment. Disability Advocacy Resource Unit in Victoria have some great courses and other resources, so we can send that through with the information. It's been really fantastic having all of the comments come through from the audience already, but we are now opening up if anyone does have any questions that they would like to ask, please send them through, and Kim is on Facebook and Fiona's on the Q&A, and they can send them to us. Okay, so here's another one from Facebook. Thank you. It's more a comment. Disability. Oh no, we've had that one.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Can I put Michael on the spot? This is sort of a Dorothy Dixter that I wasn't planning, but I think advocacy training, some of the best training is actually mediation training, so that people can learn, because you often have to preserve relationships, you know, with people that are carers. So you want to be able to workshop that effectively. Do you have any thoughts about advocacy versus mediation?
I've not been too involved in the mediation side of things, so I can't provide a direct comparison. But what I can say is that what I like about advocacy is that it is led by the person with disability and their family, and so it can take whatever form they feel is best for them. And, you know, if I was working with someone and they wanted to explore something like that, that's definitely something we would unpack together and try together. But I love that idea of preserving relationships. Generally, there's that saying about don't call people out, call them in. And I think that's how advocacy should be approached. Yeah, but mediation's a good idea for people to explore as well, for sure.
And another recommendation from the audience, Let's Talk Disability is really good awareness training, and it's led by presenters with disability. And then we have a question on the topic of non-speaking people with disability. In a case where someone also has very limited receptive language, it is obviously important for us to find ways to be able to hear their story also. And do you have any tips on how to help support those people in more practical ways? Michael, thought you might be a good one for that.
Yeah, perhaps. I know that there's a couple of advocacy services that are actually doing a lot of work at the moment in helping people who are non-verbal and have limited receptive language skills to explore ways that they can contribute to the Royal Commission as well. So I can provide information about some of those advocacy services. But I think as long as there is an interest within the Royal Commission, or that the Royal Commission prioritises engaging with people with those experiences of disability, I think the community will get creative to make sure there is a way that that happens. I still think there's a lot more work to do there, if I'm honest with you. But my hope is that we can come together and make sure that people of all abilities have that same opportunity.
And another question, how can we better reach people who haven't heard of the Royal Commission, or who don't realise that they have a relevant story to tell? And like I was going to point to you, Amman, as the person who didn't know about the Royal Commission.
I reckon the best way to get the word out on Royal Commission is some funny memes. We know that works. To engage the way media is now being received, we're going to need some outrageous article titles so people can engage on Facebook. I don't know. I mean, I think it's just to open the conversation and, I don't know, pester the media to talk about it. You know, if you want me to call Rupert Murdoch and say some outrageous statement just so I can get interviewed on Sky News and then change the subject, we can do that. Let's play dirty.
I love the creativity.
I probably can't do that, but I was going to suggest that, you know, with social media, even having the badge, you know, for something like Facebook, I've told my story. You know, everybody's got a coronavirus, I've had my shot. Something like that might actually get the word out there because family can circulate it.
We've got some encouragement for you from the audience, Imaan. We've got to love it, do it.
Yeah.
And a great idea, Bridget. I'm just looking. Okay, so there's a comment from the Q&A box. Thank you all for your input today. It is honestly just so helpful to know sometimes that your experience is not totally unique and there is so much out there for people to best navigate life with disability for themselves or their family. Your very limited and valuable time is greatly appreciated. So thanks for that comment. That's fantastic. Any other questions from the audience?
This is where I pretend to look for around the audience to see if anyone's got their hand up.
From the virtual audience.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I have a final question. Imaan, I thought it'd be a good way to finish off. Do you have any final words about being fearless and fabulous? What comes first, fearless or fabulous?
I think to be fabulous, you got to be fearless. And also you can't be fabulous without being fearless because it's a flow state. You know, it's a kind of like, I don't know, it's a strut. Even if you can't walk, you can still strut. It's a way of carrying yourself. It's knowing that no one can actually change you. You can go about your life and affect change the way you want to see it. And don't let people upset you because they don't actually have power over you. And I also wanted to say something about the Royal Commission before I stop talking. To allow flexibility and realize that people with disability do find a way. We're all humans and humans evolve, and we evolve to find a way to make life easier. So to listen to how people with disability have adapted for their life, so then that can be implemented and learnt upon for the future people with disability. So I think it's to be adaptive and to listen, because I can't reach everything, but I do have a retractable stick. But you know, so that should be available in every post office, you know, something like that. I don't know. I'm talking too much now. I've had too much coffee.
No, I love the strut. I kind of lied because now we've had a few late breaking questions, and I know people would love to hear more from you guys. So one is, where are we up to in the Royal Commission, Michael?
So luckily it was extended fairly recently in acknowledgement of the difficulties of the pandemic in allowing people to know about it and to engage with it. So it's extended until 2023. I can't remember the hearing that's coming up, which is terrible. But yeah, there's still plenty of time if that's sort of what you're getting at, and there's still plenty of resources. There's counselling, there's legal support, there's the direct advocacy support until 2023. So the time is now, and I think learn more about it, get involved, and there's plenty of people to assist you to do that.
And what do you think is the best way to address Royal Commission skepticism? I think you could, any of the panel could probably address that one.
Ignore it. Go about your day.
I think it's important that the decisions that are made by government are representative of everyone. And, we can't expect better outcomes if people aren't willing to speak about the issues that confront them. So, the Royal Commission is something that the government has committed to doing. And, there's a lot of money being invested to hear what people have to say. So have a voice. Don't let people who don't have an understanding decide the policy that applies to all of us.
And just some information in the chat. So there is a public hearing next week, which is on preventing and responding to violence, abuse, neglect, and exploitation in disability services, and that you can find out more information about the public hearings on the Disability Royal Commission website. And I thought a nice way to finish off would be some of the comments in the chat, which are fantastic. Thanks to you all, loved hearing your perspectives and experiences. The fearless, fabulous flow state, love it. And even if you can't walk, you can still strut. That's brilliant. So thank you so much to all our funny, fearless and fabulous panelists, to our fabulous Auslan interpreters and our fabulous transcribers, and to Kim and Fiona for all of their help and in organising the event, and also to all of the audience. It was really fantastic having your questions and comments coming through. If you are feeling inspired by this fearless and fabulous event and you want to share your story with the Disability Royal Commission, you can call Your Story Disability Legal Support on 1800 77 1800, and we can provide you with free independent legal support, and we can also connect you with counselling and advocacy services and people like Michael. And please do also let us know what you thought about today's events and what you'd like to see in the future. I love some of the ideas that have come up already about memes, and Bridget's idea about social media and showing that you've shared your story. Fiona's posted the feedback survey in the chat, and have a really wonderful and fabulous International Day of People with Disability, everyone, and thanks so much.